Hey guys, this is Patrick. Today I want to show you an endgame tactic that I played in a game recently. It's a rapid game, 10 minutes for each side on each S. And so we reached this position, and so we just reached an endgame. So we just traded queens, and now my opponent has played the move f4, which kind of surprised me. But here in this position, there's only one sequence of moves that maintains or that gets an advantage for black. Only one sequence, the other ones are all drawn. And so this is an important point in the game. What do you play here as black? This is a, if you can see the whole sequence, go ahead. This is kind of a difficult tactic, and we'll stop along the way as the position changes. But in this position, I had to decide what to play, and there's only the one move that gets an advantage for black. So here, try to decide what to play. I'll give you 5 seconds. I recommend you pause the video because it's kind of a difficult and long tactic. But so go ahead and pause the video and take a look at this position and decide what you would do as black. Alright, so here as I said, my opponent kind of surprised me with f4. I can try to trade the pawns. In this case, for instance, white recaptures on f4, and he's got the 2 pawns. Now I'm stuck with 3 pawn islands with the ones over here, so this is not ideal. Ideally, I would like to bring my king in the center, so this is what I continued with. So here my opponent took the pawn, and here, of course, I could just recapture and having lost the pawn, so this is not best. The key move here is king to f5, attacking the rook. Now, if white goes back, rook to e2, and I believe this is the best move according to the engine, I can just take back here, and I've got a pawn in the center. It's actually a pass pawn, and I'm getting ready to push. My king has gone from g7 to f5, so it's centralized. The white king is still blocked in by the rook and bishop. So this would have been good for me. But after this move, my opponent played the move e6, so actually sacrificing the rook, because after that he's getting ready to play e7 and queen. And so here's the other point in the tactic where I'm asking you, what would you play here as black? Another option is just for black to go back and defend against the pawn. And so here as black, what would you do? I'll give you 5 seconds. Pause the video if you need more. Alright, so here of course white's plan is to push the pawn in queen. After the pawn reaches e7, the bishop can no longer stop the pawn. Actually, if I take back, which I did, if I take the queen, or the rook can no longer defend against the queening square. So my opponent played e7, and here one last time in this tactic, what do you play as black? I'll give you 5 seconds. Alright, so here the move that my opponent missed at the end of this long sequence is simply the move rook to d8, just defending the queening square. Now, of course, if white queens, I can just take it. That's why you play rook to d8. The rook defends the queening square. And so my opponent took the rook, and I took back with the bishop. And here's the situation now. We both got a minor piece, and actually we traded 2 pawns here. If we go back to when my king was on g7 and he played f4. So we traded both these pawns, we traded both these rooks, but then as a bonus, my king ended up on the e4 square. And of course, one drawback is my bishop went to the back rank, but can't be perfect. So let's just go back through the moves. The key move, of course, was rook to d8. I had to see this move when I decided, because of course I saw he could take and push once my king gets to f5. So I had to decide if I take and queen here in this position. I had to decide, can I stop the pawn from queening? and I think my opponent missed it, but I saw that I could play it. And so the bottom line after this long sequence is, so we got the equal material, but my king is very much centralized. I might be getting ready to take the pawns. And also the nice thing is the bishop is on the same color as my opponent's pawns on the other side of the board, where his king can't defend. So this is a completely winning endgame. Yeah. So here, just to go back one last time, here I had to decide what to play. This is drawish. It would have been fine. The only move that keeps the advantage for black is centralizing the king. So, and of course the key tactic in this position, so maybe something to put in your memory, is how do you stop a pawn like this? My opponent sacrificed a rook, so there's no problem in me sacrificing a rook. And yeah, and so I won the game pretty easily after that. So I hope you enjoyed. I'll leave the link to the game in the description if you want to go take a look at the endgame and play around. Maybe look at the computer engine to see how King g7 to g6 to f5 is the only move that gets an advantage for black. So play around, have fun, and let me know what you think. I hope you enjoyed. This tactic was very difficult. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed. See you guys later.